Sinn Féin formally invited to Northern talks, but participation of Ulster Unionists still in doubt. Fine Gael reject government view that Ray Burke's affairs not be referred to new tribunal. Dismissed Fruit of the Loom executive settled with company in $2 million package. And a non-form Pádraig Harrington chases a place on the Ryder Cup team. Good evening. There's been a broad welcome for the British government's decision to allow Sinn Féin enter the North's talks process. Announcing the move, the Northern Secretary said she's satisfied that the IRA ceasefire is held for the last 6 weeks. The Taoiseach has said the decision to allow Sinn Féin into the talks represented an historic opportunity for that party and for the peace process in general. Tonight, the US administration said it supported the decision. It's also been welcomed by the SDLP and the Alliance Party, but has been condemned by the Democratic Unionists and by an Ulster Unionist MP.
As expected, Dr. Molam said that for the past 6 weeks, the IRA ceasefire had held firm, and she was now writing to Sinn Féin, asking the party to nominate its team for September's talks. While she was satisfied that IRA violence had ended for now, she avoided expressing a view on the ceasefire's permanence.
On the basis of the information that I have at present, I believe it to be an unequivocal ceasefire, that active targeting has stopped. That is the basis of where I am now. I can't answer that ad infinitum, nobody can. But I think we have the basis for the beginning of confidence building in a talks process to move it forward.
The Northern Secretary confirmed that once Sinn Féin is in the process, Gerry Adams will be meeting Tony Blair. Dr. Molam didn't minimise the difficulty of persuading Unionists to sit down with Sinn Féin next month. She appealed to them to take the opportunity that the process provides, whatever their fears.
Now, we can always dwell on history, we can always look in the past and see what has happened. We've got to understand that past. We've got to make sure we know and learn lessons from it, but my goodness, we don't have to live in it.
But the Ulster Unionist's newest MP, William Thompson of West Tyrone, was having none of this. He castigated Dr. Molam and said no self-respecting unionist would sit down with Sinn Féin at what he called this squalid negotiating table. While his party leader was more measured, David Trimble was still supping with a long spoon.
As far as I'm aware, there is no evidence that Sinn Féin is committed to exclusively peaceful means. They have turned the tap off on violence. They could easily turn the tap on again. The expectation of most people in Northern Ireland is that if their outrageous demands are not conceded by government, there will be more violence. And in that case, the government is going to look very foolish when people remember that it went around today saying that there was a genuine ending of violence when there's no reason to believe that it is genuine.
While Dr. Ian Paisley issued a direct challenge to David Trimble.
If the OUs go to the table, then they will be guilty of the greatest act of treachery to the Union and to Northern Ireland that they could be guilty of. But if they don't go to the table, then the talks finish. They're dead in the water.
Sinn Féin's chief negotiator appealed to David Trimble to enter the talks next month. Martin McGuinness said that the process would be difficult for everyone, but that it represented an opportunity that justified the term historic.
For the first time since the treaty negotiations of the 1920s, we are going to have Republicans, the Irish government, the SDLP, the British government and hopefully the Unionists involved in inclusive negotiations. I think that it is probably, given the day that's in it, an appropriate word.
William Thompson's comments illustrate the tension within the Ulster Unionists on the issue of sitting down with Sinn Féin. As of now, it looks as if David Trimble might opt for some kind of proximity dialogue rather than face-to-face talks, but that's not a position he can maintain indefinitely within the complex talks structure. So today's announcement effectively means that the table may be set, but it's far from clear who will be sitting down on September the 15th.
The Taoiseach and the British Prime Minister Tony Blair have spoken by telephone this evening. A government spokesman said they had a lengthy discussion during which they reviewed progress in the peace process to date. They also explored how they could now convince those who have not yet agreed to become involved in the talks on the 15th of September to enter the process.
On his return from Luxembourg, where he had a meeting with the President of the European Council, Mr Ahern said today's developments offered a unique opportunity to move the peace process forward. He said both governments would now work to ensure that all the parties would be at the talks next month. Commenting on Unionist reaction to the announcement, he said he could understand their suspicions about whether the ceasefire would last, but he urged them to have the confidence to take the leap of faith that was necessary.
I would also say to them that I'm sure they are, as I am, very pleased to see that we've had one of the quietest Augusts in 30 years, where their people or any other people on this island have not been shot and attacked. That this seems to be the most complete ceasefire that we have seen, including the 1994 one. And I'm sure that they and the people they represent wholeheartedly welcome that. And the opportunity to build on that is an opportunity for them as well as it is for me. I can't do it on my own, and they can't do it on their own.
It is my hope that all parties will take the opportunity to be present, because I think it's very important that no party should allow the interests of those that they represent to go by default by their absence from the 15th of September.
The Fine Gael leader John Bruton called on all participants to the talks, including Sinn Féin, to recognise that fundamentalist positions would have to be abandoned on all sides if a genuine and lasting accommodation is to be found. The Labour leader Dick Springs said it was important that Sinn Féin were in the talks to establish their bona fides, while Democratic left Simon Gilmore said Sinn Féin now had an opportunity to prove that they had rejected violence and that they accepted the Mitchell principles.
It was arguments over the last IRA ceasefire which prevented Sinn Féin from entering the talks process. The past 6 weeks of this ceasefire has witnessed little or even no IRA activity on the ground. One security source said it has been the quietest 6 weeks in many years.
The lack of celebration when this ceasefire was announced was a clear indication that people were sceptical. But over the past 6 weeks, security sources say IRA activity right across the north has practically vanished, and they believe it will last for the foreseeable future. One of the main features of this ceasefire is the lack of punishment attacks and targeting. During the last cessation, the IRA continued to monitor the security forces and loyalists, often carrying out dummy runs. This time, though, that's ended.
It is tailed off, and tailed off substantially. So one would have to say that there is someone somewhere saying, our ceasefire is credible, will you please believe us? I think we'll wait some time before we decide whether it's credible and unequivocal.
During the last ceasefire, punishment attacks increased fivefold, and they continued. In June, Sean McNally lost most of his right leg in one such attack. It's widely believed there's a permanent IRA squad in Belfast whose sole purpose is to carry out assaults, sometimes on a nightly basis. Over the last 6 weeks, there's been none.
There is a calm situation that is an uneasy calm, but a calm nevertheless, and a calm that the people of Northern Ireland are glad of.
But many Unionists believe this calm is purely tactical, and the IRA will return to violence if they don't get what they want. Peter Robinson said this correspondence from the Central Unit of the British Home Office confirms this view.
Ceasefire, like the previous one, could without any warning be broken or ended at any time. It is also likely that, as before, PIRA will continue its targeting in preparation for carrying out further attacks. This is the Home Office of this same government. So the Home Office doesn't trust the IRA, but the Northern Ireland Office does trust the IRA.
But for the average person, peace has brought a far more relaxed atmosphere to everyday life. It's now up to the politicians to make it permanent.